Good mornings, Miss Amrita and friends. So, since our class for today is asynchronous, I would like to present my topic in this video. So, my topic is in the same chapter as our previous chapter, which is regional heterogeneity of the large market and production-based Indonesia economics. So, for today, I would like to present the uh, five subtopic after the previous presentations. With me, Kadewina Duhapsari, with my last region number 080 with absent number 2. Alright, so before we jump into the subtopic of our today discussions, I would like to explain and sharing with you guys. This is the Indonesia. So according to BPS atau Badan Pusat Statistik, the people or the total society in Indonesia in 2024 is 284 million people atau 284 juta jiwa, which is it is 3.4% from the world society, 3,4% dari jumlah penduduk dunia. In Indonesia, with this number of population or people, the 70% is in the productive age. And in Indonesia also, according to the PS 2010, there are 1,340 ethnic in Indonesia. So if we see this table and information, in our mind, we could analyze this is like a large opportunity, but also big challenge because this large opportunity, if the government provide all the people with the good skill, good education, and they can support their life. So how if the government don't ensure it, it will be the problem. The criminality will increase since the people cannot work because their skill is not fulfilled, and it will be the challenge of our country. Therefore, this high number of people in Indonesia, we could say it as a double-edged sword or pisau bermata dua. Next. All right. So now we will I will try to next in our subtopic. The first subtopic is from surplus female population to surplus male population. So according to the data, the sex ratio has continued rising since 100, 1971. So what is sex ratio? So sex ratio is the proportional relationship between the number of males and females in a population. How to measure a surplus of female or male? We could use sex ratio. It's expressed as the number of female per 100. So sorry, it expressed as the number of males per 100 females. Jadi, please allow me in bahasa, itu dihitung dengan jumlah laki-laki per 100 perempuan. So in the table, we could see like the number of sex ratio from this year always increase. It has mean that the male population always increased from 1971 until in the year 2000. So, do you think it is good idea or not? So, the sex ratio in 2010 reached 101.2. It is a huge amount. It has been like per 101 males, there are 100 females. And this number is increased from the previous years. So if we compare in the population in each province in across Indonesia, in the sex ratio from the low, as the number is uh, 94, is in West Nusa Tenggara atau Nusa Tenggara Barat. So the amount of sex ratio in NTB is 94. It has been like 94 male per 100 females. But in reverse in Papua, which in amount 112. It has been every 112 of male, there are 100 females. Therefore, in Papua, it called land of men, since the surplus of male population in Papua is really high. Therefore, in the reverse of surplus male, they are feminization. So feminization has mean like they are surplus female. So feminization also occur in few other provinces, such as North Sumatra and West Nusa Tenggara. So as I said before, in West Nusa Tenggara atau Nusa Tenggara Barat, uh, there are lower sex ratio or male population. Therefore, in Nusa Tenggara Barat, there are a feminization. So, since our focus here is surplus male population, there are some factors that influencing female deficit in Indonesia. The first, according to the journal that I already provide to you guys, the first thing is son preference. So, preference for a particular sex of child influence parents to continue to have children until children of their preferred sex are born. So, don't we don't need to get many examples. So let's see in Bali. So the son preference in Bali is really high. So according to Soarji and Hatmaji, son preference in Indonesia appear to be non-axis or weak, with the exception of the Batak and Aceh. And we could see and Bali also. It because for the Batak and Aceh and also maybe Bali ethnic, a son or a male population will attribute and believe can carry their family names or marga and perform ritual ceremony. Therefore, sometimes a family want to have son, and unfortunately, in this now era, when the mother is pregnant, they can also predict from the doctors about the sex of their children, and some of them, my preference sons, uh, yes, some in some country that sons is really matters, such as India, they do abortion for if their children is female. But hopefully in Indonesia it's not happen. The second factors that influencing female deficit is under enumeration of females in the census. So, and the last is sex selective migration. It has meant that the presence of large female migrants. So the female migrants work abroad or migrants result in the female deficit in population. We move to the next subtopic, which is continuous increase in adult population. So Indonesia, I believe all of us already know about Indonesia face a bonus demography. So we can see like in the figure 2 that I already provide here in 2010, We could see like there are a large number of born of the children, but also a large number of people in the productive age, but low number of people in the non-productive age. But we can predict for this first picture in 2035 there will be a huge number of productive people and increased number of unproductive people because the people that already productive in the 2010 will shifting to unproductive in 2035. So, Indonesia experiencing a relatively fast demographic transition describe some new phase in the country population as the product of past transformation. So, this continuous increase in adult population have large opportunities, but also a big challenge for the governments. The growth of population in Indonesia should be manageable, and the changes in age structure will in many ways be favorable for more rapid economic development. It depends on the quality of the people in Indonesia. Let's imagine Indonesia face bonus demographic, but the people in Indonesia don't have the skill, education, and something that can support them to do a job, or sometimes they are jobless. So it will burden the country, right? So increase in adult population, it's good if the government manage this in a good way. Therefore, the challenge of this increase in adult population or bonus demography should be not underestimated. So, increasing population and expected of the steady rise in the per capita income level lead to the increase in consumption, needs for infrastructure development, and etc. Therefore, uh, this should be manageable. So this increase in adult population will have two impacts. The first thing I already provide here, there will be many benefit in terms of economics since our subject here is economics. There will be increase in per capita income level atau GDP. But government must to ensure and have the planning in order to ensure this golden demographic era will not become disaster. So if the government not planning and action from gold demographic era, people will suffer in their life. So the possibility of increasing number of older people in the future will also be a challenge for government. Please allow me in bahasa. Jadi dengan adanya bonus demografi ini, itu juga akan nantinya menjadi increase in the older person. Jadi juga meningkatkan orang yang unproductive age. Jadi kan mereka nanti setelah produktif akan memasuki masa-masa atau usia-usia yang tidak produktif lagi. Nah, ini juga akan menjadi sebuah challenge bagi pemerintah untuk financial condition of the country. Because in Indonesia, until now, there is a limited social security system and scope of welfare assistance. Yes, therefore, the continuous increase in adult population also already described in the graph here. In each province of Indonesia, we can see the each age number of each province. So they are before productive from 0 to 14, productive for 15 to 59, and unproductive age more than 60. So in each province, it consists of these three classify of age. Then we next. So the next topic is between Japanese majority and Chinese majority. So I believe all of us already know about the ethnic conflict that happened in Indonesia in 1998. So the people uh, face a crisis monetary and the Tionghoa or Chinese minority suspect as the reason behind it. Therefore, there are conflict between a Tionghoa or Chinese minority in Indonesia in monetary crisis in 1998. Before, sorry, so when right, so when Suharto New Order regime collapsed in May 1998, other ethnic conflicts in various provinces have sparked off since. So became the biggest and the most unpleasant surprise for Indonesia. So the first statistic on Indonesia multi-ethnic were only collected in 1930 by the Dutch government. Jadi, sensus tentang jumlah etnik atau etnis dan suku bangsa di Indonesia itu hanya dilakukan pada tahun 1930 oleh pemerintah Belanda, which is there is before our independence. There, for the 70 years after those census, information and ethnic was never again collected in any population census or survey. So, because the lack of statistics of multi-ethnic during old and new order era, uh, it was a political taboo to discuss different religion and ethnic. Jadi setelah itu, apalagi pada masa Orba atau Orde Baru di bawah pemerintahan Soeharto, perbedaan etnik, religion atau agama itu dianggap tabu, sehingga tidak dilakukan lagi survei tersebut. Nah, so the statistic and ethnic have produced much clearer pictures on Indonesia ethnic group. There have been a lot change in ethnic composition in Indonesia between the years from 1930 until 2000. So before the availability of the 2000 population census, Chinese Indonesia were speculated to comprise between 3 until 10% of the total Indonesia population. This percentage were too high and the number was actually between 1.5 and 2%. Jadi pada tahun 2000 itu diadakan sensus kembali dan dispekulasikan bahwa jumlah Chinese di Indonesia itu 3 dan 10% dari total penduduk Indonesia. Padahal ternyata percentage ini terlalu tinggi. Pada kenyataannya Chinese Indonesia itu hanya sekitar 1,5 dan 2% dari total penduduk Indonesia. In contrast, sorry. So, in contrast, Japanese has been perceived as the highest majority since more than 50% of Indonesia population is Java ethnic. So, in the table that I provide here, it's descriptions and also tell to us the Japanese and their concentration in each province in Indonesia. We could say like the Japanese people or people that have ethnic Japanese concentrate in the Java Island. We can see like in the central Java, The concentration of Java ethnic, it is 98%, and etc. And the lowest Javanese people in the province is Nusa Tenggara atau Nusa Tenggara Timur. It should be concluded to wrap up that Javanese cultures of the people and politics were closely related and in fact very dominant. So why people should say about Javanese cultures and politics were closely related and in fact very dominant. So let's imagine Java, or we can see like a Java Island in Indonesia is titik pusat dari semua hal yang ada, especially ibu kota. For now on, still on the Java Island. Therefore, Japanese cultures and the politics itu masih dipengaruhi oleh cultures atau uh, hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan etnik Jawa. Karena kan tentu kalau misalnya kita bilang di Pulau Jawa itu kan kebanyakan people-nya itu orang-orangnya yang mendiami adalah dengan suku Jawa. Sehingga dengan adanya sistem pemerintahan kita di sana, pasti orang-orang yang ada di sana itu dipengaruhi oleh culture-culture yang ada. Sehingga, uh, in summary, Javanese cultures and politics were closely related and very dominant. If we compare to other ethnic, yeah. All right. We next to the next subtopic, which is between the ports of Mecca and the ports of Jerusalem. So, we already know that Indonesia is a country with the large number of Muslims in the world. Indonesia, let's remember Indonesia is not Muslim country, but in Indonesia there are a large number of Muslims. Indonesia is a multi-religious country that recognizes other religions such as Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, Catholic, and Konghucu. Therefore, the other religion exclude those religions that I already stated is not allowed in Indonesia. But not having religion is not an option because we have identity card or KTP, and in the KTP it states that there are an option for religion, so people must to state their religion even though they are not practice the religion. So, as example, Kahriangan is an example of local religion, or in Bali, we could say Krishna. So, Krishna is a local religion, but not allowed for the laws in Indonesia. Therefore, the people that adopt a local religion as like a Krishna or a Kahriangan in their identity card register as Hindu. So, the percentage of Muslim in Indonesia increased from 1971 until 2000, as did with the increase of percentage of Christian, consisting of Protestant and Catholic. But in reverse, in other hand, the percentage of Hindu, Buddhist, and Confucius are declined or decreased. So most of Indonesian Muslim live on the most populous island of Java. This is the island where the government first started the family planning program. So, according to this statement, we could see like Muslim people increase the population, therefore, and then they reside in Java Island. We could conclude that the Java Island is population is increased because of the large Muslim reside there, and then the government started family planning program in Java because the people here is too much crowded. So in Indonesia, 87% of the society is Muslim. In the graph here, it's already explained to us the religious composition in each province in Indonesia. So we could see like from here is Muslim, and this is the strip for Hindu and etc. So the highest Muslim population in Indonesia will impact in many sectors such as politics, law, social, economy, and etc. So Uh, as example, is Law Number 18 of 2001 granted special autonomy to Aceh, Indonesia, and give the province or Aceh authority to implement the Islamic way or Sharia influenced law. So if we search in Google and etc., we could know like Aceh implement Muslim laws and it's allowed from the national or jadi itu juga sudah diizinkan oleh pemerintah pusat karena in Aceh they are focus or sorry they are the people and population there is mostly it could say it like 90% is Muslim, so it's low there. And then in the highest Muslim population in Indonesia also impact in education sector. It's faced in the significant portion of education system in Indonesia integrates with Islamic teaching with a strong presence of pesantren and madrasah. And also, last but not least, as we already face and we already feelings, it's also impact in our politics. So I'm sorry if I use bahasa. So when we face a presidential election, we know that all the presidents, calon president, it's come from Muslim religion because Muslim is the highest society in Indonesia. So So yes, they must to have the support from the highest population to ensure that they may win the election. So I think if there is a calon presidents that not come from Muslim in Indonesia, it's little bit impossible to win the presidential election. So that's why the highest population Muslim is impact in many sectors. And then before I forget, as we are accounting, we also know that there are Islamic banking system and etc. There are the impact of Muslim population in Indonesia in economic sectors. All right, so we move to the last subtopic in this presentation, that is between low and high education. So in Indonesia, to gain a good education, people also need have some capital. So capital here, it's not only money, but also other capital, such as uh, infrastructures and etc. So I was already please allow me in bahasa. Jadi sebelumnya saya juga pernah nonton vlog di mana anak-anak atau siswa-siswa di pedalaman itu sangat sulit mendapatkan good education karena memang mereka tidak mempunyai modal untuk itu. Yang pertama adalah tidak hanya dari uang untuk sekolah aja, tapi dari keluarga. As example, if the family not jadi kalau misalnya keluarganya pun sulit untuk makan, mohon maaf, jadi kan sulit untuk mengutamakan pendidikan. Jadi mereka akan berusaha untuk mencari kerja dulu. Anak-anaknya tuh sulit untuk di-encourage to gain education because they need to fulfill their so much first before got the education. Jadi mereka akan fokus kepada kehidupan mereka daripada untuk mencari education. Nah, selain itu, the other capitals is infrastructures and also their environments. Kalau misalnya teman-temannya pun tidak sekolah, kalau di pedalaman kan jadinya mereka tidak semangat juga untuk sekolah seperti itu. Nah, therefore, this is why poverty and education are like an endless chains. So in 2000 atau di tahun 2000, 60% of working age population in Indonesia attain at most primary education. Okay. In the graph here, there are education level composition in the working age population in the province across Indonesia. And as we know, lately, the delivery of education in Indonesia has also been decentralized, meaning that is now the regional government responsibility to maintain school, pay teachers' salary, as well as collect student fees. Do you think it is good idea or not good idea? So, for my opinion, decentralized education is good for the province that have um, like sumber daya yang memadai. So as example is Bali. So Bali already bisa dibilang provinsi yang maju since we have sumber daya atau pariwisata yang membantu perekonomian masyarakat. But let's imagine a province that cannot have sumber daya yang terlalu banyak. Kalau kayak misalnya di Kalimantan atau Sumatera, Sulawesi, and etc. Jadi mereka dengan wilayah yang besar dan uh, besar dan juga pedalaman. Jadi really difficult to maintain education untuk anak-anak pedalaman. Jadi biasanya tuh di kota-kota baru lebih memadai fasilitasnya if we compare to pedalaman. And then, uh, so this decentralization of education policy might have increased the large regional variation in education attainment. So taking religion into account, kalau misalnya kita menghitung berdasarkan agama, the research that conducted by Arifin found that educational achievement also varied across religion group within the majority of Muslim finished only primary school, while Christian attained education above primary school level. Enjoying tertiary education is still luxury service for a in Muslim in Indonesia. Jadi menurut penelitian dari Arifin bahwa Muslim in Indonesia only majority atau mayoritas itu only finish in primary school. Jadi if we compare into religion, the Muslim only finish in primary school. So in the picture that I already provide here, the dark blue picture is a good education province, but in the sea blue is still not good or low education. We can see like Bali is a good education. So as I already said before, it's because decentralization education is supported by our SDM. Jadi SDM di Bali atau ekonomi di Bali ini kan lumayan sangat bagus didukung dengan pariwisata. So the government can encourage and support our education. As example in Badung Regency. So Badung have many sources of income from pariwisata, dan juga kita lihat itu the government really take attention in the education, and they provide like a laptop, computer for especially for elementary school students. Jadi SD-SD di Kabupaten Badung itu mendapatkan fasilitas yang baik dari adanya desentralisasi edukasi dari pemerintah. Alright, so Indonesia demographic and socio-cultural dynamics uh, will lead to the economics for Indonesia. The transition from surplus female to male, the number of Muslim population in Indonesia, and also the rising number of adult population, and last but not least also the between the low education and high education in Indonesia will lead to the economics sectors in Indonesia. Therefore, the something that we need a note to our mind is Indonesia is a big country. There is a big opportunity and big challenges. Therefore, yeah, we need to try our best as the population of Indonesia, as we try to not burden our country. And yeah, that's all from my presentation. I hope it's give new insight. And please write down your question or additional information regarding this topic on the stream, and let us discuss together. I'm sorry for my mistakes that I not attention in this video. And yeah, have a nice day. I wait for your additional information or question, and see you next week. Bye bye. Thank you.